What do you do when you have a group of students that just won't stop talking?
Usually at the beginning of class we talk about group process and what the expectations are and what I expect and what they can expect from each other, and really try to promote like a learning community so that everyone feels a little bit responsible, and usually it isn't a huge problem. Sometimes you get sidebars and then they realize what they're doing, but generally it isn't a huge problem if you front end load it beforehand. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with what Molly's saying there. Just set it up beforehand, and typically it's not going to be a problem. You may find that you've got some group that's chattering away. It's quite possible they're talking about the course or some aspect of it. It's also probably more likely that they're not, but that's okay. It's just part of the climate that I want to encourage within the class, that they feel comfortable as long as it's not disruptive. There are critical times when they have to be paying attention, and I'll let them know. And if this is happening, then I'll just intervene and ask them just to be quiet and do it in a positive way. And generally that solves the problem. I think I've only had this occur twice where it's got out of hand, where they just wouldn't stop talking. And one time I actually had to stop the class, and another time I asked them to leave. And I didn't feel comfortable doing it, but they'd had a lot of advance warning and so on. But that's only happened like a couple of times in lots of classes. So by and large, it's not an issue. Yes, yeah, I have asked them to leave. But that wouldn't be the first response. I would stop the class, and I've had said to students, like, this is really disruptive. It's not helping the class, and if you do really need to talk, then go on outside and talk, and that's fine. But otherwise, please don't. And another thing I've done is split people up. So if it's a particular group, have them seated elsewhere the next class. Maybe they just have real trouble being quiet. But to try and address it that way, in a positive way. But if it's not going to work, well, then they know what the consequences are, and it may come to that.
The other thing too, just to add to that, is when you set it up beforehand and let all the students know we're all responsible for the behavior in the classroom, I find often the students monitor that, and it takes care of itself. I don't have to come on as the heavy teacher, and that happens most of the time, I would say. Yeah. Well, the students and I decide as a group how we want the learning environment to be. What would be the best way for us to learn? And those things always come up about sidebars, and okay, so what will we do if there's sidebars? And so everyone understands, and unless a student has some kind of an other problem, a mental health challenge or something, and is having difficulty focusing, usually I think students pretty well are able to monitor themselves. We have that partly sometimes as the participation, it's called group process or professional, I forget what we call it, professional development. And that part of that's participation and just the whole group dynamic and taking responsibility for the learning and all that stuff. Yeah, it's part of, there are criteria, and then they have to speak to it, write to it as part of a mark. Yeah.
I think I always find the best bet is to not address it during class if possible. Like most of our lecture sessions are fairly short, so if I can get through it with that day, then address folks afterwards and talk to them, and then that gives time if there's a reason for things, then they can. And I've found that in 99% of the cases, if you explain the fact that it's disrupting you, it's disrupting the class, you can see it's disrupting the class from your vantage point. Folks are pretty good about it, I think. Yeah.
I do the same. I have actually called either groups or most likely individuals. So if it's part of a group, I'll talk to them individually and just explain to them that it's very difficult to do what I need to do in the context of that class, and have them carry on their conversation as well. And usually that's enough for them to prevent engaging in it again in the future.